It's the Locked On Flyers podcast for Friday, December 13th. Your daily dose of Flyers news, analysis, and high quality content that doesn't know who I want to give a hug to more, Scott Laughton or Aleksei Kolosov.
I think Scott Laughton.
You're Locked On Flyers, your daily podcast on the Philadelphia Flyers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, and thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen every day. I am Rachel Donner. I've been podcasting about the Flyers, the NHL, and hockey for a decade, and I'm here, as always, with prospect expert and Flyers credentialed reporter for 19 years, Russ Cohen. You can keep the season going with a big return on FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win that first $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. And to keep up with our latest episodes and Flyers news, you can find us at Locked On Flyers on all your favorite socials, including Blue Sky, and of course here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We are going to talk about some of the things that head coach John Tortorella had to say prior to the game a little later in the show, as well as preview tomorrow's matchup against the Minnesota Wild. But we got to start with this Flyers versus Red Wings game. And man, like I said, Scott Laughton, 4 goals. Like, what a tremendous game for him. And it could not have happened to a better guy.
Yeah, he's got a big history against the Red Wings, and I don't know what it is. Does he see red? I'm not sure what it is, but I thought there was a chance he could get a natural hat trick at one point. It's amazing. I'll just say this. I mean, it's a great game for him because we've talked about his struggles a little bit. And so, you're happy for him about that. I mean, honestly, this is the kind of game that could get a coach fired for the Red Wings. Like, they were playing pretty good in the first, and after that, the Flyers just took over the game. And yeah, they scored one and they made it a little close, but it wasn't really that close.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't say they played well in the first. I would say they played a little better than the Flyers in the first, but
Yeah.
both teams were very sloppy in
Yeah,
that
that's fair.
period, I thought. And then the Flyers just kind of picked up the pace and got it together and had crisper passes and just more clean zone exits and all of that starting in the second period. And through most of the rest of the game, I think, until like the Red Wings scored that little flurry right before then. But yeah, Cam Talbot was really the only Detroit Red Wings player that showed up for most of that game.
He made some unbelievable saves. There was one leg save, like I swear he was daring the shooter and he just made it at the last second. Like it was unbelievable. He did put on a little bit of a show, but so did Kolosov too.
He did. And let's talk about Aleksei Kolosov because, spoiler alert, we're going to talk about him later in the show. And we, in our conversation about what John Tortorella had to say about the hierarchy of goalies. And, that conversation was had without the context of this game against Detroit, full disclosure. Right. I still think I agree with our conclusion there. But that being said, this was a tremendous performance by Kolosov in net and made some absolutely spectacular saves in this game. And I think that, if there's a game that's going to move him up a little bit in those estimations and maybe make you think twice, this is one of those games.
Maybe. I still need to see him against, some better teams. He did give up some bad rebounds, I felt. But look, he had a good game. He won the game. Mm-hmm. I just worry about development. That's really what we talk about in the next segment. But, this is a nice win for him. And he's one guy. He's not going to get too high or low. He's not even excited that they named him the backup. Goalies get this. Like goalies,
right?
I don't know what age they're trained to kind of just be like neutral about where they stand on a team and where they stand in their career. And they're just always kind of like down the middle. They just never go anywhere but, the middle.
Yeah, I think it's important for goalies, frankly, because the highs can be very high and the lows can be very low, and you can put an entire team on your shoulders. And you're right. They do learn to kind of speak neutrally about everything, whether it's their own performance or the team in front of them, if they've really, if it's really obvious that the team in front of them let a goalie down, the goalie will never say that, right?
True. Never.
So I think he's just par for the course with that. But, it's good to see that even in translation after the game that he is towing that line. But yeah, I think, between Laughton and Kolosov, that was pretty much the game for the Flyers there. However, we did hype up the Cates line on our
Yes.
previous show. So I want to check in to see how they did in this game in particular. You have to put a little asterisk there, as we did in terms of the matchups that this line gets.
Yeah.
And Cates got some extra ice time with others. Like he was out there with Owen Tippett for a little
Right.
bit, there with Joel Farabee for a little bit as well. But with just this line, and the Cates line with Forster and Brink, all 7 shot attempts that they had were unblocked. 6 of them were on goal. They're the only line in the positive for that. They only had 3 unblocked shot attempts against out there as well. So another really solid performance from this group.
Yeah, they're an effective line. If they start producing, like, it's going to be one of their best lines. Like, for a little while, it has been like their second best line. But if they start producing a few more points, yeah, everything says that they should.
Yes, I really do. And, they have been slowly more producing. Obviously,
Yeah.
this game, like, nobody did except for
No.
Scott Laughton. But
He was the
I
team.
think
He was the
he was.
entire team.
Yeah, which, by the way, I know it's up to 102 now because of the 2 empty netters, but at the time of his 100th goal, 10 of his 100 goals were shorthanded in his career.
Yeah, that's an amazing thing. It is astonishing. Yeah. We all kind of laughed at his first goal because, he got stoned earlier in that game. And so he was just like, I'm just going to blast it. I'm going to try that. Like I don't think it was like he knew he was going to score that. I think that was just like, let me just try this because nothing else was working that, and then he got hot. He scored a shorthanded goal like again. And so, yeah, a really nice effort. We do have to talk about the Michigan attempt. It was smart that he did it on a delayed penalty, but we're all, wondering if John will ever say anything about it. And we think unofficially, we think it's like his third one. So
yeah. I would say he'll say something if he actually scores on one of them.
Or if it goes the other way. That's what we were thinking. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That is a definite possibility as well. But I feel like, he might as well keep trying them as long as being smart about it. Yep. Maybe one will go in eventually. We'll see. But
goalies are used to it, though. Brian Boucher off the record was kind of, everybody was talking to him about it. And goalies are wise to it. Like, they're all putting up their arms and making sure that they're covering that part of the net when they feel like a player is on that side. So players are just as, like in the old days, everybody was trying to wrap around. Nowadays, they try Michigan's more than the wraparound sometimes.
Yeah. I want to talk about Michkov a little bit more because he did take the one Flyers penalty.
It was bad.
Game, and it was a bad penalty. And then, of course, he got rocked up against the boards coming out of the box when he missed the puck getting sprung there. But I do think, again, this is just a discipline issue with a young player, and he's going to just have to really learn how to mature on this front.
Yeah, I mean, literally, he's taking his lumps in the league. Like, he really, especially the last 2-3 games. But, like, DeBrincat has that kind of personality that he knew what he was doing. Like, he goaded him. He knew it. He knew he could get him annoyed. And teams are going to still test him on it until he doesn't react to that.
Yeah. And then the other thing was special teams, and that we didn't really get to see much of it because each team only took 1 penalty in this game. So very limited data.
This game went very quick. We really felt like the refs had dinner reservations or something. Games never go this fast.
Yeah, I want to talk a little bit about Emil Andrae being out. And, there's not much to talk about here, again, because of the only 1 penalty on each side, with Drysdale moved up to power play 1. Zamula got the power play 2 slot. But we do talk a little bit about Andrae being left out of the lineup tonight later in the show. But I think that's obviously the logical thing to do in this circumstance. Of course, Drysdale gets power play 1 here. I didn't think it looked very good, first off,
No, it didn't, and I
overall.
didn't really, to be honest. And Zamula passed up a shot at one point that he probably should have
He
taken and gave.
did.
Yeah,
He did.
and Talbot got set after that. It wasn't great for either one of them. I'm just gonna flat out say it. When Andre's not there, they're missing the push up from the blue line because he doesn't make mistakes, whether he's bringing the puck up the ice or he's making that first pass, which is the best on the team. He has the best first pass on the team.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, the good news is that all's well that ends well, and the
Yep.
Flyers came out of it with the 4-1 win. And the next game will be against the Minnesota Wild. We'll talk about that later in the show, but we're going to talk John Tortorella and his player development thoughts coming up next. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any other of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action, and here's why you need to get started today. You can win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks, and you can also get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed. PrizePicks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. Download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get $50 instantly after you play that first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. PrizePicks, run your game.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5, get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. I would bet with the Ravens on the money line against the Giants. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
On Monday's show, we will be recapping the game against the Minnesota Wild, which we're going to preview later in today's show. Plus, it's Monday, so we'll have our nemesis of the week. Always excited for that segment each and every Monday. A lot of stuff going on with the Flyers beyond the game against Detroit. And John Tortorella had a pretty eye opening media availability prior to the game. And we want to dig into some stuff along those lines. But first, Jacob Gaucher got an ELC, which I think was a little bit of a surprise to me, in terms of the timing, but I don't think it was undeserved. He's 23, undrafted, started with the Reading Royals on an ECHL deal, got an AHL deal, now has an NHL contract. I always love a story like that.
Yeah, it's a good story. I feel like he's definitely progressed. I've watched him in some of my other work, like when I'm doing some of the Canadian stuff for Hockey News. I'm watching Laval playing against Lehigh Valley, so I'm
Right.
noticing a lot of Gaucher, and his shot's gotten a lot better. Like he's got a pro shot now,
He
so
does.
I get it. I do. It's worth the risk.
Yeah, he has 4 goals and 1 assist in his
Yeah.
last 5 games. He had a hat trick earlier in this season in November, and I could not agree more. I think his game has progressed, and to your point, his shot specifically
Yeah.
between last season and this season,
Yes.
he clearly got
Because
stronger.
he showed a lot in a little in dev camp, I should say, but it wasn't enough. Like there was times and moments,
Right.
but now he's showing a lot more.
Yeah, and we've been, talking about the Phantoms every week on this show, and, when not a lot of guys are standing out in a good way, he has
Yeah.
been one that has done so, and he's somebody that I now have expectations for, and so this contract will only add to those expectations, but I think it's good motivation for him.
It is good motivation. I think it does help that he's 6'3" too. Let's not lie.
Well, yeah, that is also true. But, yeah, congrats again to Jacob Gaucher on that contract. Going back to John Tortorella's pregame media availability, he was asked some pretty pointed questions about decisions that have been made and, just his assessment of things. I want to talk about Drysdale first because, he got into some pretty detailed conversation about Drysdale's game and mentioned that he checks forward in this concept he calls surfing, which it appears to be just a thing he uses
Yeah,
in
this is
terms
a
of a
John
term.
term. It's not a real hockey term.
Yeah, and thought he was better his second game back, but this is like a checking forward instead of falling back defensively
Right.
when the opposing team is coming into the zone. And it's a very good aspect of your game defensively if
Mhm.
you want to be an aggressive defenseman.
He's not going to really be that aggressive. He's doing it at the moment. He'll slip a little bit, especially if his offense picks up. I mean, these are things. There's going to be ebbs and flows with him, but that he did look better in his second game, and we said
Yeah.
so. He still has to have a lot better season. We said that too.
Yeah, and he absolutely was pretty level about Jamie Drysdale and expectations there.
Right.
So I thought that was pretty good.
Yep.
On the Emil Andrae healthy scratch, I thought it was a really interesting decision for him to make. And I think it was a good one in a lot of ways. I think for, Emil Andrae, he's somebody that just likes to play and play through it. So I'm sure it's frustrating for him individually, but sometimes I think this sitting to observe the game or just to get a little bit of rest, especially how banged up he got in the last game, might not be such a bad thing. If this extends to 3 or 4 games, that's when I'll have a problem with it.
It shouldn't even extend to another game. I get it. If you want to take a game off for him because you're protecting his health, I'm all for it. My problem here is they have too many defensemen. They're not making any kind of move right now. So unless you plan on sitting Zamula forever, Andre may start to lose some playing time, and it's not fair. And so, because honestly, if it were me, if Andre's just better, he's better. And then I just move on from Zamula. I trade him. I mean, that's just the way it is. But it seems like they're hell bent on just juggling all of these guys to kind of hold all these assets. But you can't hold these assets forever. You have other guys coming too.
Right. Now, Tortorella said specifically that Andre has not been playing as well recently as he was
Come
like when he
on.
first started.
Like, okay. I mean, does he'll never talk about Sandheim's game anymore, right? Because he's having a really good year. So we're never going to get that kind of talk about him. But is it really a game to game now with Andre? We could clearly see he's at least their third best defenseman when Cam York's there. Like, what else is he looking for? There's no perfect defenseman out there, not on this team. Even Sandheim's not perfect, and he's having a great year.
Yeah, and I think that there's a middle ground here. I do think, he's had some trouble with the physicality for sure. He does need to be more aware of hits coming his way and be able to avoid them better. But I also think the Flyers offense, I think more at 5-on-5 is better when Andre's out there
It's a
than when
lot
he's not.
better. You could
Other than
show it.
Sanheim, right? I
Yeah,
think
you could show it. It's easy to see.
yeah, yeah. I think, the power play he hasn't been as good on. I think Tortorella is correct about that. He's
Nobody's good
still
on this
much
power
better than
play.
anybody else,
Yeah,
but
nobody's good on
he
this
is
power play. Even Drysdale
right,
hasn't done anything yet to kind
right.
of add to it yet. We'll see if it's supposed to happen.
Yeah, and that's where what I'm saying is that he isn't as good as he was in his first, 3, 4 games, but nobody is as good as Andre has been on the
Right.
power play either because the power play isn't good overall.
Right.
So, I think it's hard to say that, but again, I have no issue with getting scratched
No.
for a game,
No.
2 max for me, and then that's it.
Yeah.
The other big thing that he talked about, which is, the elephant in the room here, is the goaltending conversation and what the decision making is going to be. He said that there was no timeline on a goaltender being sent down or being dealt with in any other way, but that the hierarchy as of now is Samerson, of course, followed by Aleksei Kolosov and then Ivan Fedotov. And we have talked about how we would keep Fedotov over Kolosov for
Mhm.
very specific reasons, for developmental
Right.
reasons, and for the needs in Lehigh Valley, which I
Right.
understand should not necessarily be a priority, but they are to
They do
some
go hand in
degree.
hand. They do. If you want him to be better, that's a way for him to be better because he's still a young goalie who's not going to play a lot behind Urson. He's just not. He's not splitting it. It's not a 50-50 split. And a young goalie needs to play a certain amount of games in a year.
Right.
One of them's not going to do it. And both of them may end up not playing enough as a result.
Right. And that's the other part of it is that like you can't keep going back and forth between the two for your backup, especially when Urson is a guy that wants to play all the time and
Right.
needs to play more in order to maintain his level
Right.
of play, right?
Yeah.
We know that about Sam Urson. And so I think, it would just be the best move for everybody to send Kolosov down, even if you think that Kolosov is better statistically right now or plays a better game than Fedotov. I think Fedotov's game is good enough that it's not gonna harm the Flyers in a
Right.
significant way.
I just
And
feel like
that's
there's
just how I feel.
extenuating circumstances here that we're
Yeah.
not privy
You gotta
to,
look at everything.
and it doesn't make sense because it just there's nobody. I haven't spoken to anybody that would think this would make sense, and it doesn't. And even if you think Sam Urson might get hurt again, it doesn't matter. These guys are first year ELC guys; they can go up and down all they want.
Yep.
So there's
Yep.
no issues here, and it's better to play than not to play. Because again, who cares? I mean, even in practice, it causes chaos because
Mhm.
Urson gets all the reps in net, and then they have to split the net. That doesn't help anybody in practice.
Yeah, absolutely. So, to be continued once again, but it is a little concerning that they don't have a plan or it doesn't seem like they have a decision made
Yeah.
yet on this front. We will see,
And
as
Lehigh Valley's twisting in the wind, honestly,
yeah.
goaltending wise.
They are. They absolutely are. You can listen to our Tuesday show. We talked about it quite a bit on that program. As an aside, apparently Keith Jones says they won't be buyers at deadline no matter what. That put that under the column of well, duh. And,
I mean, you would think, but I guess just because of the way there's this, we're rebuilding, we're not rebuilding, we're doing both, we're retooling, we're not doing that. No, nobody used the word retooling. I'm just saying nobody knows what they're
yeah,
really doing. They're saying they're rebuilding, but trying to do both. So I do think he was just trying to clarify, and I'm okay with that.
yeah, that's fair. That's fair. I just, it was just kind of like, why would they?
I
Like
know.
with all the assets
Well,
they
because
have.
there's
Anyway,
probably some fans that are like, look, you're only, whatever points they're out, 1 point out. Okay, I get it, Mr. Fan, but the reality is go look at how many games, regulation wins, what their schedule looks like, and it's a hard task, even a point out or 2 points out right this moment because of games in hand and other things at play.
yeah. All right. Well, this weekend, the Flyers will face the Minnesota Wild, and that'll be a really tough matchup, very different from the first time around with the Wild. And we are going to talk about that coming up next. We're driven by the search for better, but when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match with Indeed. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. One of the things I love about Indeed is that it makes hiring all in one place so easy because you can avoid all the busy work, can use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent survey. Leveraging over 140 million qualifications and preferences every day, Indeed's matching engine is constantly learning from your preferences. So the more you use it, the better Indeed gets. And listeners of Locked On Flyers will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked on right now. Support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on Locked On Flyers. That's Indeed.com/locked on. Terms and conditions apply. Need to hire? You need Indeed. All right, the Minnesota Wild have been on a tear. We last saw them October 26th, so very near the beginning of the season. If you recall, that was a really banger of a game. The
It was.
Flyers won 7-5. The Coots hat trick was in that game. It was very back and forth. Travis Konechny had a goal and 4 assists in that game. Ristolainen even had a goal in that game. there was a lot going on. Of course, that will end the season matchup with the Minnesota Wild, and they are very close to the top of the league right now. They're 19-5-4, 7-2-1 in their last 10, and they are facing the Edmonton Oilers at the same time as the Flyers game. So we don't know the result of that yet. But they did win 5-4 over Utah in a shootout in their previous game, which was a tough game for them. But their games kind of tend to swing widely in opposite directions. We talked about the Red Wings having 1-goal games. This is a
Yeah.
team that it tends to be more of a wide swing.
Well, we could talk about common opponents, and it's not that long ago the Flyers played Utah, and they lost
Mhm.
to Utah. So Minnesota is a tough out. A lot of people are starting to talk about them. This is like the first year I didn't pick them to do anything, or maybe the second, but they
I
just
know,
remind me
right?
of the Sharks. They're just kind of, but this year they do seem to have it together. Uh, Philip Gustafson's been their guy, and
Mhm.
Kaprizov is definitely a Hart candidate. There's no question about that. And so, yeah, you got Faber. There's a lot of guys to like there, and so I like Matt Boldy. I don't know if Eriksson X still out or not. I can't remember.
He
Um,
hasn't begun skating yet,
no, okay, so
so
he's
he
still
won't
out.
be in.
So that's
Matt
that's a plus for the Flyers.
Yeah, Matt Zuccarello started skating again, so we don't know if he'll be
We don't
back
know.
in
Yeah,
yet, but we'll see.
yeah. I mean, so they're a team that definitely have to watch out for. If you're in the press box, watch out for the popcorn because Bill Guerin will be after it. That's all I'm saying. Um, but this is going to be a fun game.
Yeah, it's really interesting because the Minnesota Wild statistically don't reflect where they are in the standings, right?
Right.
Because except for this one major stat, which has led to them winning more than not, and they're first in the NHL at goals against per game. So it's going to be really tough to score against them.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of the Nick Backstrom days, the goalie Nick Backstrom. Like there was,
Yeah.
Nicholas Backstrom, well, with the Capitals and stuff. But yeah, I mean, when Backstrom was there, I think they were kind of like in that same mold. But that was the Jacques Lemaire play the trap days, right? I think that's the same era. Kind of seems like I'm sure they're not playing the trap, but it does kind of
No.
seem like they've gone because the game just doesn't really allow it. But they're going back, to that defensive team, and hey, and one day they're going to have David Jiricek in the lineup.
Right. And that's the thing is
Really,
that
you
they're
let that go
very
by? I was surprised.
yeah, I'm
I thought
gonna
you
let
might
it
give.
go
Oh,
by.
okay, all right.
It's because the Wild have a very strong defensive structure, to your point, but they're also aggressive and much faster offensively and have a much more dynamic game than they have
Yeah,
in the past. But yeah, the rest of their stats are just kind of mid. Their power play is okay, but not great. It's still better than the Flyers, but mid. Their penalty kill is bad. Maybe the Flyers can score on the power play against them, but TBD on that front, given the Flyers' power play, right? They don't take They're mid-league on shots on goal per game, so they're not taking a ton of shots. They're under 50% on scoring chances percent at 5 on 5. They're good but not great on their shooting percentage, still above the Flyers. Again, that's not hard to do, but they're not in the top 10 even in the league in shooting percentage. So it's like it's really interesting how they've managed to turn like good defense into good offense and
yeah,
and get wins here, right?
yeah. I mean, that's like the Torts way. So they're going to play a similar style. So the Flyers are going to have to outdo that. I do want to also say I'll take King of Prussia Mall over Mall of America. That's me.
Okay.
I mean, I just like it better. But anyhow, back to
All
hockey.
right. The Minnesota Wild, then, who are no longer the Minnesota Wild. Yeah, I just think the Flyers are going to have to take advantage of opportunities when they get them here and just have really good shot accuracy because when the Flyers are on it on that front, they can score a lot of goals in a game. And I think that's really what we're looking at here. The Flyers are better than the Wild on face-offs here. And, I think that it's something that they're going to have to look at set plays and take advantage of those as well. But it's going to be a really, I think, hard fought battle. Maybe we'll see one of those exciting games with a million goals in it and see who comes out on top. Or it could be one of those defensive battles where there's almost no scoring. I think it'll depend on which Flyers team shows up.
Yeah,
Right?
I think it will matter. Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, that will do it for today's show. Thanks so much for listening. On Monday, we will recap this game against the Wild. We'll have our nemesis of the week. And as a reminder, we always want to hear from you. So if you've got mailbag questions or Flyers thoughts, let us know on any of our socials at Locked On Flyers. You can email us at lockedonflyers@gmail.com or comment on our YouTube channel. I'm Rachel. I'm on Blue Sky and Twitter at rmiriam. That's RMIRIAM.
I'm Russ. I'm at Sportsology on all the same socials, SPORTSOLOGY.
Thanks for making Locked On Flyers your first listen today. For your next listen, find Locked On Fantasy Hockey. Become a fantasy hockey expert and get the edge over your league mates with daily tips from Steal and Flip. Find Locked On Fantasy Hockey on YouTube or wherever you listen to podcasts. Have a great weekend, everyone.